welcome to today's podcast. My name's Helen Tovey, I'm editor of Family Tree, and with me is,
Nathan Thunderbolt Ward.
yes, and we have a very special guest. So who's our special guest? Do you want to introduce yourself, special guest?
I'm not sure about special, but yes, Matthew Hill, also from the Family Tree team.
Yes, and that's very, very modest because Matt is actually publisher of Family Tree. But
Yes.
anyway, Matt is a bit of a dark horse. So we had this remit recently to just give a kind of little bit of insight to the team, the Family Tree team, because we're actual human beings working on this family history magazine. And I think to really get family history, you do have to be a human being. Not that we're feeling sensitive about AI or anything. Anyway, we did this groovy little kind of what do you call them? Like not quiz, but a little summary of questions. And we're going to put them on the website. And we actually think other people might enjoy answering the questions as well. So anybody listening to the podcast would like to answer the questions, we'd love to hear your answers. Anyway, the reason we've got Matt along is because Matt's a bit of a dark horse. Because when we talk about family history, me and Nathan rabbit on and we bang on and on about our family history. But then Matt doesn't really say much. And then he answered the questions and we're like, wait a minute. You've been doing loads of family history. So we thought we'd rope him in to come along to the podcast. So welcome, Matt.
Thank you. I can't claim all the credit. My dad did a lot of it. So sometimes you kind of get lucky with other family members doing it. And I think my great uncle did a lot as well and kind of spoke to my dad about it. So together they did quite a bit. So I can't claim the credit for all of it. But yeah, it's because my dad did it, it's kind of given me the basis to then go and explore it further. And also I think he kind of concentrated on his side of the family, as you would. So we're kind of looking at my mum's side as well. So yeah, it's really exciting.
I think you mustn't feel like you shouldn't claim the credit because that's what Nathan, like a few months ago, when you started getting stuck into your family history, you had your mum's box of papers and you really felt like you were cheating, weren't you? Whereas it is family history. I think it's okay to get clues from your family. I think that's all right.
Yeah, I definitely cheated then, going on Nathan's standards.
Well, yeah.
What I've gone before.
That's very stringent standards. I think I've over-brainwashed him. That's the problem. Now I'm trying to row back a bit.
So what were the questions you asked? I can't remember, but I really enjoyed answering them.
Okay, let's dig up the questions. So we came up with these questions and I'm going to quickly run through what they are because they're fun topics and they're the sort of thing which anybody might like to answer themselves and also chat about with their family because it's great for getting other people a little bit curious about family history. So the questions, for instance, were things like, what was your weirdest find in family history? What's your guilty pleasure? Where would you like to time travel to? That sort of fun thing. And there's one question which I think is, what would be, who would you like to ask to dinner? Now, that's such a popular question in many different kind of topics, but for family history, that's pretty cool because that's going to involve potentially time travel as well. So, Matt, you've got one of those kind of ever-old family mysteries about why people did things. Why did they do what they do? So, do you want to tell us about your dinner guest? Who would you love to be able to scroll back time and have sit down at your family table in their Victorian clothing and tell you about their lives?
Yeah, well, it would definitely be Harriet Kitson. So she's my 3 times great grandma, and then she married Ishmael Wainwright, which is quite an unusual name, or it was quite Ishmael, and also when you look through the records, the amount of different spellings or mistakes with that name. So it's got Ishmael spelled Male at the end, which is wrong. Ichmad, Ahmed, I've seen, so lots of different. I think that's just the transcriptions of it. But the interesting thing, the thing that kind of caught my imagination with both of them is that in 1827, Harriet with her family got on the Little Cherub ship from Liverpool and went over to New York for a new life in settled in Philadelphia. And then Ishmael, about a year later, so in March 1828, he also went over with his cousin. His cousin was called Sylvanus, which is quite a cool name as well. They went over again from Liverpool to New York, and their ship was called Active. So you might be able to help me here, Helen, with the ships, because I'm really interested to see. I've done a bit of digging and not been able to find the actual ship, but I'd love to find out, what the ship was like in 1828. How long did that journey take? Those kind of things. So that's really cool. So they both went over kind of around the same time. They were both born in Yorkshire, and then the next time we see them is on the 1840 census, where they've got 3 children and they're married. So I wonder, did they know each other in Yorkshire before they went? Were they, did they go to school together, something like that? Or did they bump into each other in a township in Philadelphia and say, "Hey up, love, you're from Yorkshire as well," and got married and, met each other that way? So that would be really interesting to ask her and him, obviously. So that's kind of where that's the 2 people that have really captured my sister and I have both kind of, really tried to explore their lives and what happened. Because she actually passed away quite when she was 32. So in the 1850 census, we actually, Ishmael and the 2 boys that they had are in a workhouse. And I've just been looking actually at that census, and it actually says blind next to Ishmael. So it's got a column, which is one of those columns that you think, oh my gosh, how did they ask those questions? I think I'm just going to find it actually to read it out to you. I'm sure you've seen a lot of this.
For me, it's actually quite unusual to find somebody with a physical disability listed in the census. And if you think when you're getting the census returns, normally our eyes always home in just on our own family members. But even if you just have a kind of in the peripheral vision, it's not often that you see people with a physical disability listed in that far right, the column over on the far right.
Yeah, but
So it
just,
is quite unusual, yeah.
yeah, just the heading for that is quite
Mm,
striking. I mean, you must
mm,
see it often when we're looking through the records, but it says whether deaf and dumb, blind, insane, idiotic, pauper, or convict. And
mm,
looking down, there's quite a few where it says idiot.
mm,
And yeah, next to Ishmael, it says blind. And
mm.
so, what happened? His wife died. He ended up in a workhouse with his 2 boys, and he was blind. And then the next thing, he's back in Yorkshire. So they came back to Yorkshire. So that's why, you know, that's why I'm English rather than American.
So many questions in it, Matt, doesn't it? Like, so, where they got injured, so whether that be worth looking in newspapers in America for any evidence of like an industrial accident, potentially that could have happened. And then you're right, those terms like the physical descriptions, they can be really harsh to read. And they use terms that we don't use anymore when referring to people's physical ability or disability or whatever. So that can be stressful in its own right. And then right back when you started describing it, you're talking about the journey, how to research the boat, the vessel they went on, and when they got there, your question, that's such a good question of when they met, because one of the key kind of ways of adding colour to your understanding of your family, but also of actually trying to troubleshoot if you're trying to identify your family, is to do that fan network thing. So it's kind of friends, associates, neighbours. So as well as looking for your family in the records, then the ideal thing would be to scour around in the community that they lived. Are there any other people who've come from Yorkshire living in their community? Are there any other people in their family's line of work? Because that's, very often just as people today, you move on someone else's recommendation, or someone's got a room for you while you find your feet in a new country. It's all that sort of idea. It's really natural human behaviour. And our ancestors did it just the same as we would do today. So I think you need to be looking more broadly at the other people in the dwellings and community nearby in America to see what clues you can get about them.
And where
And then
would
I
you
think
get that then, Helen? Would that be from looking at the census records, or?
yes, so for America, then I am really bad at American research, but I think they go back to about the 1790s. So in England, if you were doing research in the 1820s, you're not going to have any luck with the census, apart from if there's an occasional fragment of census which survived. So I have some Orkney ancestors, and there are fragments of the 1821 census for Orkney that survived. I mean, how lucky am I? So that's really cool. But yeah, it's just pot luck whether any from your area survived. So you could be looking at census records. Again, I don't know about American records. What I do know is that they are held quite often more locally. And so if there was a court fire, you'll have this memory of there always seem to be court fires. And if there's a court fire, then and the papers for your ancestors' area have got up in flames, that's obviously going to put a massive hole in the places you can look. But that's what you need to try. And then this is what I mentioned it to Nathan the other week, but it really is such a good place when you're trying to learn about a location that's new to you in your family history search, you go to the Family Search Wiki. It's free and it has over 100,000 wiki articles. So you could start off with just putting in Philadelphia and just getting a feel for what sort of records are available for Philadelphia. And then if you know any more specific locations within there that you can find out, then you need to be kind of drilling down to even suburbs, villages, as the tiniest kind of location you can, because with family history, we always want specific information, don't we? Not broad
Yeah.
brush.
Yeah, that's really useful. And I know my sister has looked into I think it's called a workhouse rather than a poorhouse, and she's she thinks she's found the right one where they were, and it's not quite as bad as it sounds. It's quite agricultural, and it looks kind of, it's not just really just poverty. It's kind of people working together and building the community, it looks like. So yeah, and then they came back to Wakefield, where all my family are from, and one of the sons subsequently went back to America and continued his life there. The daughter, who was we think with Harriet, her mum, she stayed in America as well. So we've got lots of ancestors there, lots of lines over there as well. So yeah, the other thing that I think is really cool, which again I didn't find, can't take the credit for. I think it was actually my mum's cousin found it, but it's a naturalization form. So it shows that Ishmael had to give up his English citizenship to become American, and it's quite a formal form. It's got a big eagle at the top, United States of America. It looks really cool, and it just says at the bottom, it is bona fide that his intention to become a citizen of the United States and to renounce forever all allegiance and fidelity to any foreign prince, potentate, state, or sovereignty whatever, and particularly, and then it's written, to the Queen of Great Britain and Ireland, of whom he is now a subject. So he had to give up any allegiance to the Queen, which I think is quite cool to see that kind of document as well. But obviously he went back to England, so I'm not sure if that kind of
It is cool. And also,
started being loyal again.
in the time period, so that's the 1820s, and then it's only 50, 60 years before that America's got independence from
Yeah.
Britain. So it's really fresh in their mind, and they've probably felt it quite vehemently. Nathan, what do you reckon about all Matt's findings? Have you got any recommendations, or what did you like about your questions when you came to answer them?
I'm just jealous, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
All this research I've been doing, I'm still in Pudsey, and you've just got two people who oodled off to America. It's upsetting. I'm very upset. I'm quite intrigued to know. I know I'm quite tangential, but I'm quite intrigued to know what the definition of an idiot is on that report.
Because it said insane as well. So what's the difference between insane and idiotic? It's horrible terms, isn't it?
Yes, I don't know the difference. I'm really sorry, I don't know the difference. But this is something that we can look into. And there are actually there's a author called Lisa Edwards, and she's written articles about psychiatry and the treatment of our ancestors over time, particularly through the Victorian period. So this would be really relevant for us. And she's written them in Family Tree. So when we get off this call, I'm going to drop Lisa a line and ask her for a kind of definition with some of the situations that people would have today, and where they would fall, like what kind of definition they would have been given in old-fashioned speak, because that would give us a bit more of an insight. So I'm sorry I haven't got an answer right now. That's what it's like, Matt, on the podcast. We don't have all the answers. We have to keep looking. It's just the family history journey. It's always that question of always keep looking.
Yeah, if she doesn't know, she'll just make them up.
Yeah. Good. And there's this other guy called Marius Turder, and he's very good on psychiatry, and so we'll ask him otherwise.
It's shocking the kind of changes in attitude to these kind of things. All those people with idiot written next to their name in that document, were they treated horribly as a result of that, or differently? Probably.
Maybe, but we've got an article coming out soon, so in our July issue, so it's going to go to print in about a couple of weeks' time. And in there's an article about blended families. So the idea being that it's very tempting to think that divorce and remarriage or no marriage and people having blended families is a modern thing. Again, it's nothing new. Ancestors had blended families just as we do, and they have it just for the same number of reasons, that people fall in and out of love, people have different economic pressures, particularly before the welfare state. So that makes sense. Anyway, stop waffling. in Wayne's article, he talks about an ancestor. I think it's his great uncle. I can't remember the exact relationship. Anyway, through the Victorian period, this boy was born and he was never able to look after himself. The records are a bit opaque. They don't say exactly what was wrong, but again, using old-fashioned terminology, he's defined as a cripple. And he is looked after by various different family members over the decades. Like once his parents pass on, then I think it might be his niece or his sister. Anyway, different family members care for him through his whole 70, 80-year life, which is really heartwarming to hear. So he obviously wasn't, well, I say obviously, he might have been treated appallingly by them, but they definitely looked after him at the time. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really interesting, isn't it?
Mm.
So the other complication with Ishmael, this is kind of as far back as I've got, is that his father's surname was actually Atkinson, so he took his mother's maiden name as his name. So when we discovered that, my mum realised that actually she shouldn't be called, strictly she shouldn't be called Wainwright. That was her maiden name, but he took his mum's name. So we kind of want to know what happened there. Did the dad kind of leave very early and he decided to take his mum's surname? So yeah, so that's more. There's so much to go at, isn't there? Keep exploring. But yeah, he did. So inviting them to a dinner party would be good. I don't know what I'd serve them though.
Yeah, what would you serve? I don't know. Nathan, what would somebody serve in Pudsey? What's the go-to dish today?
Do you know what? I'm gonna be boring and say Yorkshire pudding and and mash all inside it. It'd be amazing.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think that's boring. I think that would be. They'd probably love it as well if they've been in America for a long time. They'd be like, "Oh, this tastes like home."
Definitely, I could go for that right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just looking at Yorkshire pudding. The history of the Yorkshire pudding. So 1747 was the first recipe in a book. So they would have had Yorkshire puddings. So yeah, we feel at home. Maybe Yorkshire pudding with a hamburger in the middle to make them feel
Yeah.
both sides of their history. So yeah, it was really fun doing the questions. When you kind of presented them to us, I thought, oh gosh, I'm not going to be able to answer these. But very quickly you got into it. So if we put them on the website, as you say, and invite other people to have a go as well.
Yeah, it'd be lovely to hear other people's stories.
Yeah, because you kind of have to curate your family history into just short answers, and then you think, oh yeah, that is where I need to look, or that is the one I've had the most enjoyment from.
Exactly. And Nathan, I don't know what you think. So it can be really tempting to be quite greedy about family history, but equally you do have favourites, don't you? Like you've definitely got your favourites.
Yeah, definitely. Like, well, most of my answers are all about George Horatio Nelson, aren't they? So, you just latch onto someone, don't you? And then the more you find out about their story, the deeper the connection is.
Okay, let's have a look at your questions then.
Mine, okay. Well,
Wow.
I obviously decided I was going to take George Horatio Nelson out for a meal, mainly because I just find his life so harrowing. Like he's got like 2 wives that died, a child that died at war, a child that died at age of 9, a child that died in childbirth. It's heartbreaking. So I just thought he needs to be taken out for a nice slap up meal. So I went for George Horatio. It was never in question, was it? Really? It was always George.
It would, but he would be so chuffed to think that you were remembering him and researching him now. It's quite cool, isn't it? Like he would never have any idea that he's going to have a great grandson called Nathan who's suddenly going to want to find out about him. Be kind of quite a gruff, self-effacing person, and it just wouldn't have crossed his mind.
No, and then he's got this little weird man who wants to care for him and look after.
But he might have the thing that you have, that he doesn't want to talk about food unless he's hungry or whatever it is you said.
Definitely, he's definitely a DNA straight. That 100%.
Yeah. So, let's see, that's your things in your list.
Mine.
Yes, yours.
My weirdest find. I haven't like I say, I haven't really got a weirdest find. I don't think, but I've mentioned it before. I've got a lady who's married into my family, who was married 3 times before. So her surname changes a lot before she becomes a Wood. Before she joins it's actually my father's line, despite it being Wood. Anyway, but her first marriage is to somebody called Wood. So before she gets to my great whoever, she's a Wood, someone else, and then she becomes a Wood again. It's not strange. I just think it's a lot to contend with and a lot to take in, and I think there's going to be a lot of confusion for me when I get to that side.
I love it because it's literally, sometimes you feel like, we always talk about having brick walls. And sometimes it feels as though ancestors are like, sort that one out. Because if you didn't know that she got married multiple times, you could happily find her being married as a young woman with one surname, dying as an old lady with another, with the same surname, and never realised she'd had all those adventures, disasters, whatever they were in the middle.
Definitely. I mean, she's going to be on the census in so many different places and names, and yeah, it's going to be a challenge, that one. So it is actually, I'm quite looking forward to it, but it does, yeah, it sounds like a lot.
Do you know, talking about other people's research, so we have actually had a really gorgeous bit of fan mail this week, Nathan. Yeah? Shall I read it out to you a bit?
Go for it.
Yeah. So I literally, when I read the email, I was just like, something just makes your day. Anyway, there's this lovely podcast listener called Kath, and she says, a big thank you to Astu for such a wonderful podcast. I've got to read it out, Kath, because our boss is here in this podcast thing, so he's got to hear how good we are. And anyway, Kath and her daughter, who's 23, have been doing their family history now for a number of years, trying to pick up research for her mum, research that her mum had did. Anyway, Kath and her daughter live about 200 miles apart, but they both love to listen to the podcast and have regular discussions about the latest episodes. And they completely agree with our descriptions about going down rabbit holes, needing to be more organised, needing for a firm aim for the research session. Otherwise, they can end up deflated, which that definitely happens to me. Anyway, they now have a Google Drive, so they can share their log, they can share their Excel spreadsheets, and they can be really constructive working together, even though they're miles and miles apart. And they'd like to say a big thank you for suggesting that they sent off for death certificates, because that was something you've been doing recently, isn't it, Nathan? And they've now got loads more information. And Kath has got a question for us, but it's too difficult. I don't know the answer yet, so we're going to have to deal with that in the future. It's about the RAS. So, Kath, thank you for contacting us. We're delighted to get your message, and we will be back with a more helpful answer about your great uncle, okay, but not yet. So anyway, it's nice, isn't it?
It's lovely. That's really nice. I like the fact that, like, people are listening in different locations and talking about it.
That's what family history does. It just connects people up, doesn't it?
It's lovely that they're sharing as well, sharing a drive where they can actually share their information. That's quite nice, working together. Because obviously I've got my mum helping me a bit, but it's mainly me. But the idea of like pooling all your resources together to do this research sounds really cool.
It's so impressively organised as well.
It better be able to be in trouble.
Yeah. Shall I tell you about one of my discoveries that I made? So my weirdest find was, it's my great-grandfather, and he is on a bit of a pedestal in our family because he was just a really organised person. I think he managed to smoke and eat toffees till ripe old age. Everyone was really impressed that he managed to remain so healthy despite having bad habits. And turned out he was a bit of a hero in the First World War, even though he never told anyone about it. But ever since I found out I put him right back on the pedestal. Not that he ever really was off the pedestal. Anyway, one time when I went to the National Archives and I was reading, it's called the Long Papers for the officers in the First World War, and he was an officer. He wasn't super posh, but he was very good at engineering, so he got made an officer because he was good at engineering. It said in his records that when he was cleaning his pistol, he accidentally shot somebody. And when you're reading something, I was just like, oh my life, I can't believe it. This guy who, we all think so highly of, he's just done a massive blooper. Like, that's quite a mistake to make it work, that you're cleaning your pistol. Obviously, he'd be in the trench or something. It's not in easy working conditions. He's accidentally shot somebody. So then I was like, oh my God. So what I actually did do, I went to the Commonwealth War Graves and I looked up the dead for everyone who died in the First World War. And luckily, the person who he shot wasn't in there. So he might have been mortally wounded. He might have had life-changing injuries, but he didn't die. So I kind of felt a bit like my great-grandfather was back in the clear. Anyway, scroll forward a few years, and about 6 or 7 years ago, I've got this lovely locket, and it has a picture of my great-grandpa in. And I got given it when my great-granny died when I was 22. So I've had it for decades now. Anyway, my mum and my aunt were there, and they were going, oh, was that the locket? So I opened it up to show them, and we were just chatting, and by mistake, the locket fell apart. The little glass window fell out of the locket. The little tiny picture, which I didn't realise until then, was a tin type. So if you tap it on your teeth, you can tell it's metal. It's like printed on iron. Little tiny photo of him fell out. And then behind that was a little tiny slither of newspaper. And on there it said, all men maketh mistakes. And I was just, and it just felt like, oh, and the picture of him, in there was him as a young boy. So I'm just like, so when did that go in? Like, who put that in there? Did he put it in because he knew he'd done this? And there's so many questions. I'm never going to know any of the answers. I love making up stories. I'm going to have to just make up stories and just keep reminding everyone they are my stories. But anyway, it was very strange and put shivers up my arms, the whole bit, all of it.
Yeah, that's novel wordy, that. Like, why did you
It
put
is,
this in
isn't
for
it?
somebody to find years later? It's
Yes. And probably he was going, I'm going to put this in for somebody to find years later and I'll never know what the thing was. But I'd already found out that he'd shot somebody when he was cleaning his pistol. So I was like, that's probably the pistol incident. But it could have been something else. Who knows? I don't know.
That's crazy. That's a good story.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's mad, isn't it? Family History is full of crazy stories, and they are always weirder than films.
So is that your? Don't we have a question about a kind of a treasure, don't you? Or an heirloom. Is that your treasure?
No, that's not my heirloom. So my heirloom they're these bone glove stretchers. So anybody who knows what bone glove stretchers are will be like, yada, yada. And then anyone who doesn't will be like, what? Weird. And so in the past, everyone had to wear very very fitted Victorian gloves, beautiful, tiny, tiny little gloves. Because if you're a woman, you'd have to have very tiny, tiny, dainty little hands with your tiny, tiny fitted gloves on them. But to actually get your hands into them, you'd have these, imagine like a pair of scissors, but when you squeeze the handles together, the two prongs go out a little bit to stretch your gloves. So you put them down your glove fingers, stretch, and then you could actually get your fingers into your little tiny gloves. Anyway, my great granny, who was a Victorian, because she was born in 1895, so I was always really impressed as a kid that she was a Victorian because I loved history as a kid. She gave me these things and I didn't know what they were. And anyway, when she told me, and she told me about how they were used and everything else, I felt so clever. And I felt really smug that I knew the answer to something that I was like, no one else is going to know this. But obviously, loads of people know this in the world. But at the time, I was very impressed by this sort of bit of knowledge and the little glove stretchers, which I still have. Weird little heirloom.
Do you have any gloves you need to stretch?
No, but I probably would need to stretch them. I've got very big hands, so I would need to stretch them if I was going to wear any tiny gloves. Yeah.
Did you have an heirloom, Nathan?
Not really, no. The only thing I could think for that one was like my nana gave me a St. Christopher, and she was like my favorite person ever, and I just wear that all the time. So it's kind of still very modern day, but I like it. It's got very sentimental meaning for me, so that's cool.
Yeah. So in 100 years' time, it could be one of your son's children's children, or going back down, will discover it and be wondering where it's from.
Yeah, definitely. I think it'll confuse people as well, because they'll be like, well, he's not really religious, so why has he got this St. Christopher on his neck? And
Yeah.
playing all those games with people. I'm going to start my own family history mysteries for the future, just to confuse people.
That's not fair.
It is a lot.
Time capsule with mysteries in it.
Exactly, yeah. Have you seen that thing where people are burying robotic dinosaur bones in the desert?
No.
Little bones in the desert, so it looks like in years to come, someone will dig it. Oh my God, they were robot dinosaurs.
You need to bury the answers somewhere else. So you give them a chance to find the truth, but make it a challenge for them, maybe.
You're too nice.
I think Nathan will actually do this.
Yeah. The heirloom that I found was I've got my granddad's war medals, but I've got a medal that my great granddad had for his service for the miners rescue service.
What's it look like? Tell us about has it got a ribbon on it or anything?
No, it hasn't got the ribbon on.
What does it say on it?
So at the front, on the front, it says Miners Rescue Service, 15 years, and then it's got a kind of a shield on the front, and then on the back, it's been printed H. Hill. He was called Harry Hill, but not that Harry Hill.
Yeah.
And then it says Barnsley Rescue Station. So, yeah, that's quite precious. I love that.
How brave because when you're rescuing people, it's all gone wrong. Like what a horrible job to do.
Yeah,
it's dangerous.
Yeah, and I know my dad found quite a few newspaper clippings, or I think, in fact, his father passed them on to him. I need to find them of the disasters that happened that my great granddad was involved in. That was called out and went down to try and rescue people. So yeah, if you kind of Google mining rescue teams, there's some really amazing pictures, and I've got one picture of my great grandfather with his colleagues, all dressed in their equipment, and they've got quite, this weird kind of breathing apparatus, and obviously the big lights and everything. So yeah, it's not that far back in history, perhaps, but still, it's just really interesting, and it's kind of it's interesting how different locations will have different kind of histories. So for Yorkshire, for my ancestors, and probably yours as well, Nathan, there's probably I assume there'd be some miners in your family somewhere, or it was such a big industry that it would have affected so many people there.
Only if there was a coal mine in Pudsey will there have been miners in my family.
Okay, because they didn't leave. Yeah, but just the amount I can remember. I can't remember the exact figures, but I remember my granddad working out how many hours that his father had spent underground in his life, and it was quite substantial. So yeah,
Just an insight to a different world, isn't it? Like when you hear of mining disasters, then the newspaper reports of how many people would turn up, and people would just be waiting because there's people can't be rung up at home, and people would just be waiting there to find out would their relatives be brought up dead or alive, and the kind of fundraising that would happen, because it's through the Victorian period, it's all pre-welfare state. So once the breadwinners died, it's a whole family in perilous circumstances, isn't it? It just makes just
the whole community, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like the whole town, a bit like the miners' strike did.
Yeah.
Completely different, but it affected so many people. Whole communities kind of were affected because of it. So yeah, very interesting, and it makes you kind of feel humble that we're sat here recording a podcast, nice and comfy, and nothing too strenuous with our work. And we think of these people that did all these really tough things and went on boats to America, and it must have been just so different.
You've actually made me think of something. So when you feel stupid for not having looked it up before. So although I'm not from Yorkshire, but I have ancestors from Yorkshire, and they worked in a mine and at the Pinxton Colliery, and I've never looked up to see what disasters happened. So now I'm going to have to go off and find out what disasters happened during the time they worked there.
Yeah,
Interesting. Yeah.
yeah, and
That's cheerfully. I get a bit macabre and cheerful, like, let's see how many disasters there were in a 20-year period.
yeah.
I do take it seriously, but it is fascinating as well.
Well, just the fact that there were rescue teams, and I kind of Googled to try and find my great grandfather's the particular Barnsley branch, and there's just so many dotted around Yorkshire and other places where there's mining. So just the fact that there's so many kind of teams, it must have been happening a lot. I think he worked down the mine as well, so this wouldn't have been his full-time job. But yeah, I think they happened all too often. So yeah, it would have been horrible. So try and let's try and raise the atmosphere now and getting
Yeah. So I still got Yorkshire connections, because I now have two little grandchildren, and one is too little to talk, but the one who can talk, who's 2 and a bit, has a Yorkshire accent. Have a little Yorkshire grandbaby, so it's all come full circle, that branch.
Good stuff. That's how it should be.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, that's it. I haven't got a Yorkshire accent. So.
No, you haven't. But anyway, it just shows how everything is all woven together, isn't it?
Yeah, everything originates in Yorkshire. I think.
Yeah, pretty much. I think, isn't it, 1 in 5 people live in Yorkshire in England? Something mad. It's a lot of people. And I think it's been like that through the Victorian period. A massive belt of industry.
But it's 4 counties, really, isn't it? It's not just one.
What do you think, Nathan? Let's see what the Yorkshireman has to say.
The West is the best. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Last week, Helen, you mentioned that you've got a hill in your family.
That's true.
You two could be related.
We could be related.
My grandma's maiden name was Wood, Nathan, so we could be related as well.
Oh, well, there you go. We're all related to Ian Fleming. Brilliant.
Yeah, let us know, Nathan, when you find out. You can do all the legwork, and me and Matt can just bathe in the glory.
That'd be a great rabbit hole. How am I related to my work colleagues?
Yes. Yes. Well, he had such a simple premise. When you started out, all you wanted to be was a Viking, and then it's all gone horribly wrong. Yeah. So have we got anything else that we need to talk about, or can we just tell people about the exciting things that we've got coming up?
I don't think Matt wants you to do that.
Oh, I do.
Well, there's one thing I'm really excited about, because definitely with family history, time is our enemy. And however much time you spend doing family history, then we always wish we had a bit more time. And we have got a really cool talk coming up in June, so it's a little while away yet, and it's about AI, and it's called Genealogy is Changing, Don't Get Left Behind, not to put the scare on anybody. But I think that's, there's ways that we can actually use AI and not just feel slightly terrified and confused by it. That's going to be good. So that talk is part of our Family Tree Plus program. So every month we do lots of lovely talks, and we have a digital issue of the magazine, and the talks and the magazine all get added to a library, which gets bigger and bigger every month. And so people can become a member of the club and then turn up to the meetings, watch the recordings in their own time. So that's just one of our cool talks that we've got next month. We've also got lots of DNA, because Nathan, every time I mention DNA, he just looks a little bit paler. But it's fine, Nathan. We've got lots of DNA instruction and tutorials coming up as well. So there's lots of people to learn about. And in July, I'm really excited about this. And we've got 3-part masterclass, and it's on how to use Ancestry, but better. Because we all spend money on Ancestry every month. And before you know it, it's a bit like when you live in a town. You go to the same pub and you go to the same gym and the same supermarket, and you forget that there are all those other gyms and supermarkets and pubs and other things that you could look at in your town. So with Ancestry, there's loads and loads of stuff. You all keep like bobbing along to the census, looking at that, and then forgetting there's a billion other things to look at. Literally on Ancestry, a billion other things. I think they've got, I can't remember, over 1 billion records. So we need to get searching in them.
Yeah, that sounds good, that one. Like, literally, I will go in and I click on the same 5 or 6 buttons, and I honestly ignore the rest of the interface of Ancestry. So there must be so much I'm missing out on that one. Maybe I'll pop on.
Oh, we got a question from Matt. So Matt, you could cast the deciding vote. Do you use Ancestry hints or not?
Probably not. No.
Oh.
No, I know. I probably should.
I don't know. Well, up until about a week ago, I would have said, what? I would have told you off. What do you think, Nathan?
Well, I am the master now. I've converted you all to the dark side, so it's hints all the way. That was my answer for one of the questions. What's your dirty pleasure? It's hints. They're the best.
But you do check them, so it's okay.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I'm meticulous.
Yeah.
It's just a good starting block, isn't it? Like, if you don't know where you're going, like we discussed this the other week, particularly like when I've found a new region that's not in Pudsey, the hints just sort of hone you in a little bit more. Obviously you've got to question whether they are right or wrong, but it's a good starting point to get your mind whirring and say, right, who is this? Is this anyone I know? Can I link it back to X, Y, or Z? As opposed to just looking at a blank canvas and getting lost straight away.
Well, so Matt, at the end, you might think you're telling us what to do, but in the podcast, we normally finish up with homework, don't we, Nathan? We talk about.
Oh no, I have to go now.
So have you got any homework that you're going to do?
Me?
Yeah. What are you going to do? Are you going to look up any of these things? Because rather than just have them as an idle question of curiosity, have you got anything that's going to be top of your wish list to find out about?
Yeah, well, I definitely want to find those ships. It sounds weird because it will have taken thousands of people across from Liverpool or wherever to America, but I'd love to find the actual ship. So I know I've searched the active, which is what Ishmael went on, but the little cherub, which Harriet travelled across on, I haven't done that too much. So I think my homework would be to try and find more sources for historic ships, because I'm sure that there'll be something out there, and just even just a picture of it, because I have to be honest, I don't know what a ship would have looked like in 1828, whether it would have I just don't know. So what would the conditions have been on there? So that's definitely some homework I need to look at. Yeah.
And have you, when you say you've done some research, like, can you remember where you've looked so far? Because if you're not sure, one of the things you need to watch out for, I say, all my lessons are always learnt the hard way. So I've wanted to is make sure there's quite often ships' names get reused over and over again. So you need to make sure that you're assessing the right ship in the right era.
Yes, I did find that actually. I thought I'd found the ship active, and then I realised it was completely the wrong era. And I don't think it would have been used for that amount of time. So yeah, they do rename them. So it's quite a tricky one, and it seems like a little bit of a rabbit hole, which I know you guys talk about and we all go down. So I could spend a lot of time finding a ship rather than finding out what happened to my ancestors.
You find out about the port that they left, look in Lloyd's lists, and you'll get an idea of the tonnage and if you can trace the kind of the period that it's active. And then once you've got, it's like anything, once you've got some key facts, then you can do Googling, because you'll know in the Google results, you'll know whether you're getting the answers for the right ship or not. And to know, what it commonly transported. Was it people, or was it mainly a cargo ship that sometimes had some people on it?
Right.
Every variable, because it's a commercial enterprise trying to make money, so they might have some passengers on a cargo ship.
Yeah. I mean, I've got the passenger lists for both
If
of
they
them.
ended up in a workhouse, I'd put money on their travelling steerage. So
Yes. Yeah, you'd imagine so, wouldn't you?
yeah,
Yeah. So yeah, that's some homework. And I think the other bit of homework I need to do is find those newspaper clippings of the mining disasters that my great granddad was involved in. So it might be a bit, a bit harrowing, I suppose, to read about it, but yeah, it'd be kind of make me proud as well to read how he was involved in it and what he had to do. So I'm going to fish those out for sure. But anyway, it's more about you guys doing homework.
No, I've got one more idea of something, which is, I wish I had somebody who travelled to America. And so if you go on archive.org and put in immigrants guide, and then they have these digitized old travel guides from the Victorian era to all different places, and then it will literally say, if you're moving out, like emigrating to America in the 1820s, this is what you need to pack. This is what you need to pack for the voyage. This is what clothes you need to bring.
Wow.
These are what bolts of fabric you need to bring. This is what food you need. This is it's and you literally get whisked away into a different world. So
Oh, wow.
yeah, they're so fun. We did an article about them, I think last year. We did an article about ancestors, like the US, UK, ancestors traveling to America, and we
Yeah.
covered immigrant guides in there. Yeah,
Yeah. That sounds really good.
really fun.
So they were for British people going
Yeah.
anywhere.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm sure other countries publish them as well, but
Yeah.
my point of view, I've always been interested in people leaving the British Isles, because
Yeah.
my ancestors tend to be British.
Okay, I'll put that on my to-do list as well.
Yeah, it's really fun. What about you, Nathan?
I don't know, I'm just jealous. I'd really like to do some research on a vehicle.
Man's tank for a start.
Oh, go on then. Yeah.
Yeah.
Tank Man's Tank. I was going to research the 33, which is a bus that takes half an hour to get from Leeds to Harrogate. Yeah. Okay, Tank Man's Tank. No, I'm not doing that. It's a rabbit hole. I've left him for now. I'm going to get back onto my main line. I am going to research some wards, and I'm not going to transfix on Captain Thunderbolt at all. And I haven't been reading up on him at all in the last week.
I don't believe you.
No. Said I wasn't going to, but I have.
So are we going to leave that as a cliffhanger? And next time we're going to talk about Captain Thunderbolt.
I'll have found a different tangent by then. So
No, you won't. No, you won't. I'm going to write it in my diary, and I'm going to hold you to it. It's Captain Thunderbolt next week. So my homework is, Matt, it was so embarrassing last week. I had to admit that I'd just broken all my own rules. I hadn't written anything down, just had a snowstorm of research, which was just a bunch of Google tabs and everything swirling around my head in a muddle. And anyway, I've now got to post this off to this is my very cool relation, who's my grandpa's first cousin. So I'm pretty old. So for me to have somebody alive from my grandpa's generation is awesome, isn't it?
Yeah, that's very
Really awesome.
But you're not that old, but yeah.
I am. No, not really old. So it's very cool to have somebody alive who's that generation. So I need to post him off within the next 48 hours, without further ado, his pack of information.
Oh, wow.
So hanging around. Yeah. So I was finding out about his dad, who was in the Navy in the First World War.
Oh, that's very cool, isn't it?
Yeah, really, really cool. Okay, we've got our homework. Over and out, everybody.
Roger that.
All right, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for listening then. Bye-bye.